Well, thank you very much for being here and sharing this time together for the good of San Mateo County and Silicon Valley and California and the efforts that we're all here to promote. I'm inspired by what Roseanne said at the beginning, which is that what we're looking for today is San Mateo County approach to problem solving. And I hope that that is what I am able to talk about, because my background is as an what we call a venture capital impact investor, meaning that I have invested in companies that should be able to make as much money as possible, but that also solve significant social problems. And in that context, I've invested in Tesla and Solar City and Revolution Foods and SAMCEDA member Proterra. And all of those have been very successful, and they also solve significant social problems. So I'm hopeful that we can do much more of that together. And I'm certainly here to advocate regionalism as well. This is me. That's someone with darker hair than I have. But my father told me many years ago, the older you get, be sure to use an older and older picture. And certainly it's one of the pieces of advice I remember. We do live in the middle of the greatest wealth creation engine in the world. I think that we all know that. Unemployment rate of 2.9% in this county means, of course, that we have to import workers from other counties because we simply don't have enough for our county. We're rated number 1 in employment, or lowest in unemployment, and there are only approximately 13,000 people in this county who are unemployed. That's the good news. The less good news, of course, is that this prosperity is not universal. In fact, certainly in the presidential election that we're in the middle of, there's a lot of talk about the declining middle class and what has happened to the middle class in this country, and that is a given anyway as an explanation for a lot of the political trends that we see. The data on this chart shows you that income has become much more concentrated in the last 25 years. In San Mateo County, it used to be that the top 1% 25 years ago accounted for about 17% of all income. And now the top 1% accounts for 46% of all income. That's quite a dramatic change in 25 years. So that has many consequences, to be sure. And relevant to what we're discussing today, I think the most important consequence is the middle class has left San Mateo County. And as you can see on this chart, in San Mateo County, what the California Budget and Policy Center describes as middle class households have gone from about 59% to about, having trouble reading it, but you all can read it better than I can, I'm sure, 48% in this 25-year period, whereas lower income households have gone from about 32% to about 37%. That's in San Francisco County. And in San Mateo County, from about 29% to 33%. And at the same time, higher income households in San Mateo County have gone from about 12% to about 19%. So again, this national trend that we have heard about a lot is even more pronounced where we live. So, of course, I've long thought, I wonder if this has occurred to some of you, that what's happening to our area is very much like New York. It used to be that in Manhattan you only had rich people and poor people. Increasingly in New York City, in Brooklyn, for example, it is mostly rich people and poor people. And the problem is we have a similar trend without the same infrastructure that exists in New York City because they built subways, et cetera, 100 years ago. So what can be done about that? There are alternatives to investing in more infrastructure, although I believe we need to do that, and we'll talk more about that. But because we're based in San Mateo County and because we're standing in the Oracle Conference Center, obviously part of the solution has to be technology-based, and we have an opportunity to take advantage of that. You probably all know that electric utility demand has been quite dramatically curtailed in California because of the use of demand-side management, which are technology-based products that with differential pricing and other technology capabilities have allowed us to avoid building additional power plants. Because by using similar technologies, which is to say using bridges, roads, and other infrastructure more efficiently, we don't necessarily have to build as much as in other jurisdictions if we're able to take advantage of our developments in technology. Now, where will some of that money come from? Where does some of that money come from? It comes from venture capital. To discuss this for a moment, because if I am saying, and I am, that technology will provide some of the solutions to our challenges, it's important to note that the venture capital business, which of course started here and continues to prosper here in San Mateo County, continues to do very well. There have been some significant changes. There have been consolidation among venture capital partnerships, but there's been a huge influx of corporate investment as well. As you drive up and down Sand Hill Road, one of the signs you now see is Schlumberger, which has a huge innovation center for energy exploration and related applications of technology, because they see the same thing that we're talking about. And that's one of hundreds of examples that I'm sure you're all aware of. So the venture community continues to prosper here. There's a lot of money to invest in the solutions that we need. And on the right chart, you see that San Mateo County continues to be a very major factor in venture activity. However, it's broadening out a bit. It's not quite as concentrated. Venture investments are not quite as concentrated in San Mateo County as they used to be. I think from an overall societal standpoint, that's probably a good thing, because what it indicates is that because of the success of this model, it's broadening out to other regions of the US and the world. These are simply some examples of early stage, expansion stage, and late stage investments. It's interesting to note that many of them are a stone's throw from where we're standing right now, whether it's Foster City or Redwood City. So the innovation engine continues to work very well. The draw of Silicon Valley, as we know, is innovation. So I just want to tell a few stories from this page that I think bring that to life. Proterra, which I mentioned, is a company that I have invested in and is a SAMCEDA member, which is very important, is an electric bus company. They were founded in Greenville, South Carolina, and moved their headquarters about a year ago to Burlingame, California. Greenville sounded right to me, because after all, that's where most of the European and Asian car companies do their manufacturing, and so that went with what I would have expected. So why did they move here? They moved here because as an electric vehicle company, what's important to them, in addition to metal bending, of course, is technology. It is advanced batteries, and it is software upgrades. As any of you who drive a Tesla know, the way you get your Tesla to have added features is through software upgrades, like a computer. Well, because it is a computer, and to some extent the Proterra bus is a computer, it's certainly a computer-driven vehicle. In the same sense, all of the advanced manufacturing opportunities that investors and others are excited about are computer-driven manufacturing systems, generally speaking, which is why this area, which has the most talented computer scientists and engineers and others in the world, which is why this area will continue to prosper, particularly for those in those fields. But as we just saw, it doesn't guarantee that for everyone. In addition, I just had the privilege of being at Stanford Health with our SAMCEDA chair, and I learned that Stanford Health and IBM are doing an all-day session at GSV Labs, which is basically across the freeway, on digital health. Because similarly, in addition to the big challenge we all face with climate change, we also face an imperative of reducing the cost of healthcare delivery. Fortunately, venture capital and Oracle and other large technology-based organizations will work with Stanford and Sutter and Dignity and others in an effort to solve those problems. The point I'm trying to make is this area will remain critical to solving the world's most important problems, and that is for us a great opportunity. But we've certainly heard about challenges. The cost of housing is extremely high. Rental rates here average now about $3,000 as of 3 months ago. Home price is $1.2 million. And I've observed, I'm sure many of you have, particularly those who are in the real estate business, that rents have increased more near Caltrain and Samtrans than they have farther from Caltrain and Samtrans, which I take as a very positive sign, because people recognize the importance of public transportation and are beginning to value it. And certainly companies, as they seek locations, are beginning to value it, which is terrific. With respect to housing, There are a couple of proposals that we've heard today, which I certainly believe that people are more important in getting a house than cars. So I thought that was an extremely creative observation that I've never heard, and I hope to help in any way to help that along. Also, the Bay Area Council has proposed making it easier for homeowners to add second units to their homes, which to me makes a great deal of sense because, of course, the principal reason it's so expensive around here is the cost of land. And when you add a second unit, there is no incremental cost of land. So therefore, it's a very practical approach. And the other, I think, is denser housing. And I'm a director of Habitat for Humanity, and we're building a high-rise, which is a brand new thing for Habitat for Humanity in Redwood City. And we've been helped by Roseanne and many others in this room to achieve that. So that's an example of a social enterprise, a not-for-profit model that has to adjust to take advantage to continue to serve its mission in a changing environment. Also, I mentioned earlier demand-side management facilitated by technology. You may be familiar with a company called Upwork. There are a few other similar companies, but this is essentially eBay for workers. In other words, it is a marketplace that matches those who need work with those who will provide work. Most often, those who provide that work do it from home or from a remote location of their choice, which of course is terrific because that means they're not adding to the congestion on 101 or even Caltrain or Samtrans for that matter. They're working in the most carbon neutral way they could, which is by not transporting themselves at all. Solutions like that are another technology-based approach to how we should solve this problem. But I definitely want to add what may be the most controversial thing, but it may be super regionalism, which is, I believe, a key part of the solution is high-speed rail. It is 38 minutes. It will be, I have to say, 38 minutes from Fresno to San Jose. I did some work with the mayor of Fresno in an effort to work with them to do the kind of investing we're talking about to diversify their economy. And in the course of that, learned a great deal about Fresno and the Central Valley. So I think a regional, or call it a super regional solution, if that makes more sense, is valley to valley. Because these are things we know about Silicon Valley. It's expensive, it's crowded, there's very low unemployment, and there are excellent education facilities and institutions. And what we know about the Central Valley is it's much less expensive. The average cost of a house in Fresno is 20 to 25% of Silicon Valley. It's much less crowded. There is high unemployment. You may not be aware that certain parts of the Central Valley have 40% unemployment, and certain parts of the Central Valley are the poorest parts of the US. Every bit as poor as Appalachia, and they're about 100 miles, 125 miles from where we are. And the education systems with UC Merced, Fresno State, and others are not the equal of the Bay Area today, but they're getting better. There's a whole entrepreneurship focus of high schools in Fresno. So, and this is not intended to be an ad for Fresno. What it is intended to be is a thought that we have the two regions, which are adjacent, complementary needs and complementary features. And so wonder if we couldn't work more closely together, and with high-speed rail we can. Lastly, and this is certainly not an advertisement for any presidential candidate, but is a way to make America great again, to bring some operations that are overseas back to the Central Valley. To some extent, it is doable. The senior executives of tech companies I have talked to have said, yes, certain capabilities of the workforce that we have distributed around the world do exist in the Central Valley, and it is much cheaper, and there are many people who can't afford to buy a house here who would love to live in the Central Valley. So I think that's a possibility. So thank you for listening to my thoughts, and thank you very much, SAMCEDA.